Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, your trusted partner in Minnesota's burgeoning legal cannabis industry. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand, attorney Jen Riza and her team will help you understand the latest developments, scope out risks, and find a compliant path forward in this rapidly changing field. Visit northstarlaw.com and let North Star Law Group guide you through the legal landscape with confidence.
And we're back. Welcome to another episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by the wonderful, the amazing Mr. Steve. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. Been talking to you all week. Let's talk a little bit more.
Yeah. Episode 20, guys. This is no longer just, hey, we've reached the 10s. We've reached the 20s, guys. We've been doing this since way back in June. Actually, the day that this comes out, so the 12th, it's our we're going to talk about what kind of episode it is in just a minute. This is the 8-month mark of when our first episode came out. So we've been rocking for 8 months, sharing the news. It's been such an honor, such a treat.
But you've done more than 20 episodes. You've done
way more.
You've done special breaking news episodes.
For sure.
You've done Black History Month special episodes out every Thursday in February. Mm-hmm. What other episodes have you done?
You've shared past events that people have come to. Maybe you weren't able to make it. Well, no worries. You can listen to the audio, be like you were at the class. Just close your eyes and you're there. It's pretty cool.
So one of those was with Chris Elvrum from the Minnesota Department of Health. Yeah. And we're in touch with him again about a potential March episode.
Yeah. We're really looking forward to being able to share information about what the state's been doing, not just on the OCM side, which is important, but really on that full regulatory side, looking at medical, looking at agriculture, really looking at what will our cannabis program look like when those legal doors open in X number of months.
Wow. It's such an exciting time right now in the industry. I feel like I could spend my entire day just thinking and working on it.
For reals. Well, let's talk about one event that we've got coming up, and it's only a week away from today. So if you're listening to this episode on the 12th, just 7 days away, you can come to an event that we've got going on at the Dabbler Depot, partnering with Stefan Cornell of Cornell Urban Agriculture, sharing all the science behind soil. It's going to be an awesome class.
Yeah, I believe he's going to take you through step by step how to make your own living soil. Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to be serving up Northern Lights beverages.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll pull some more tricks up our sleeve. Like, there are plenty of tickets still available. We recommend buying them today and getting in line because it's going to be a really fun spot. We're going to be at the Modest Brewing private event space. First time that there's a cannabis event going on in the Modest Brewing private event space. Yeah. And we're going to pull out all the stops. There's going to be Bovida packs flying out of our ears.
Mm-hmm. You know, I learned the other day that the phrase pulling out all the stops is about organs, because you actually pull out the stops to make the air go through the tubes and make the sound. And
okay, but last thing, that's Legacy Cup award-winning Stefan Cornell Urban Agriculture. Last time at the Pressing Rosin event, they were so gracious with everything they handed out.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine that they're going to be any less gracious. So please support the Minnesota Cannabis College. Get your ticket for the Living Soil class. We're going to have a great time. And the bar doesn't close till 10 o'clock. So for those that love to stick around, this is your class.
Yeah, it'll be a fun time. All right, well, we've got a great episode today. Today is the start of the legislative session here in Minnesota. We've got a legislative special here today with 2 interviews that really are going to tell people about what they can expect this coming session. So first off today, you'll be hearing from Jess Hanson, Representative Jess Hanson out of Burnsville. She is going to talk a little bit more from that legislative side, what people can expect to hear. It was a great interview.
Yeah, nice one-on-one conversation Tanner had with Jess. I got to sit in and hear it. It's really, I'm going to say interesting, but not in the Minnesota sense. It's like, it's really eye-opening into what you can expect in the next few months as it relates to Minnesota cannabis politics.
Yeah, really, I learned a lot from it. It was a good interview, so listen to that all the way through. A little bit later in the episode, we also have an interview with Kurtis Hanna of Blunt Strategies. He's going to tell us a little bit more about, from the consumer side, from the business side, what we can expect to see this coming legislative session and in the next couple of months.
Yeah, shout out to Kurtis. It was great to see him at the studio as well.
Mm-hmm. But before that, we do have a little bit of news that we wanted to share. There has been a lot of stuff going on in cannabis. We're going to be getting to some news about the Orono City Council next week, so be on the listen for that. But first, we couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about our friends over at Minnesota's own Legal marijuana now party.
Legal marijuana now. Is that what they want?
Allegedly. No. Yes, it is. So if you listened to our episode last week, you heard that they perhaps have a presidential candidate on the ballot that is not actually wanting to be on the ballot, actually isn't a resident in Minnesota, doesn't really know how she got on the ballot. But regardless, she's there. Please don't vote for her. But another thing happened this week in regard to that. This week, the DFL party has petitioned the Minnesota Supreme Court to undo the major party status of the Legal Marijuana Now party, making them but another minor party here in the state.
Because they've been fucking around.
Yeah. So we want to be very clear that there are the statements put out by the DFL, there are the statements put out by the Legal Marijuana Now party, and there's probably the truth somewhere in the middle, but it's probably closer to the DFL side. Allegedly, I'm not slandering anyone. This is just my own opinion. But I think looking at this, when we can see the reason that the DFL has gone to the Supreme Court to say, hey, they didn't meet one of the lowest bars of being a party, which is having a convention in every county, or not even every county, just 45 counties or legislative districts. You have to go to, you have to have some sort of convention, you have to have some sort of meeting. I've been to these on that Senate district side. They're really not that big of a deal, but they are important for hearing people's voices. And allegedly, every single one throughout the entire state of Minnesota happened on the exact same day, within the exact same hour.
Every single convention happened on the exact same day at the exact same hour.
Yeah. And so it begs the question of what is a convention really? Is a convention one person in a room on Zoom? Well, maybe.
Oh, is that what we're doing April 5th and 6th?
What I think is just amazing about this is if you ask the party, which I'll be honest, the Star Tribune did, they reached out and said, hey, what's up with this? The party said, hey, no, we've met our due diligence. We did everything we need to. We tried to make sure that we had that democratic process. And the quote that I really love is they said the undemocratic party has chosen this path, and I'm confident in the information that we have provided to the state.
Okay.
And we should clarify that information they provided to the state was rejected 2 times before they eventually refiled, amending information slightly before it perhaps got approved.
That was like me trying to pass my driver's test at 16. took a couple times.
But you got there, and that's the point. No. Well, so this would be like if you had taken your driver's test and allegedly, I want to be clear, allegedly, you just did all of it at once. And you walked out, and then you walked back in, and you said, hey, I just did all of it. It happened on Zoom. Give me my license.
I did my permitting. I did my test, the written and the driving.
You both got through the intersection and parallel parked at the same time. It was impressive. Really, you should have had your license before this. Oh,
that's crazy. That sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And the DFL also agrees. The quote that I love from Ken Martin, the head of the DFL, he says, if you really want a party that supports legalization, vote for the party that legalized cannabis here in Minnesota, which is
the Democrats.
The DFL party. Yeah. So we couldn't really pass up that opportunity. There's, of course, other news going on that we're going to get to next week, but couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about this one.
Has Crystal reached out to you yet?
Has Crystal not yet. But Crystal, if you're listening, we'd still love to chat with you. Please, we don't even have to fly you in. We'll just Zoom with you. It'll be
at the same time.
Yeah, all at the same time. Wow. Truly, I mean, the hits keep coming for the Legal Marijuana Now party. Yet again, showing that if you want politics to be interesting, you just got to do something crazy, and maybe it will be.
Right.
Well, speaking of the DFL, we're going to jump to an interview here with Representative Jess Hanson. Truly a great conversation. So listen through to the end of that to hear a little bit more about how you can help support efforts coming up this session to really help advance cannabis policy here in Minnesota.
Awesome. Bundle. It's time to bundle for February. We've got 2 free tickets with every new bundle coming out February and March and April with Bovida. We're doing a new bundle, and you can have 2 tickets to the boot camp for the bundle.
Hey, Steve, you can just tell people that they can buy the bundle. They'll get 2 tickets to the boot camp. You can go to mncannabiscollege.org/highly-educated and just buy your bundle.
Why didn't you just say so?
Go buy your bundle today. All right, and we're back. Super excited to be sitting here today with my old friend, Representative Jess Hanson. Jess, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in. I'm super excited to have you back in the studio. You actually are one of our repeat guests. We had you in our studio, but not here at the Dabbler Depot, but back at our office, like surrounded by blankets hung up in the ceiling. You were one of our first episodes, just talking about House File 100 and the huge change that was about to come about. That was way back in June of last year. Now here we are. It's 2024. Cannabis is legal. Very exciting. Thank you. And thank many others. But truly, thank you so much for coming out here. Just as a little rewind for people, tell people a little bit about who you are and what brought you to the legislature.
Sure. So I'm Jess Hanson. I represent District 55A. That's down in the southwest metro. I represent Savage and the northwest part of Burnsville. I've been in the legislature I'm in my second term. I will be running for re-election again this year as well. And I was an activist before I became a legislator. And this became part of our platform as activists was to get involved with local government. And so I got involved with the local party, and one thing led to another. And next thing I knew, I was running for office. And then the pandemic hit, and I won. And once I got into office, we had worked so many years before that to move the parties, both parties. We invited them to the conversation to really listen to the voices of Minnesotans. And the Democrats listened, and they showed up, and they started to really do the work that needed to happen. And so Majority Leader Winkler at the time, worked on the bill. I encouraged him to go around the state, talk to our community members, and he did the Be Heard on Cannabis tour. And here we are, a little bit after that with an entirely legal system. We've ended prohibition. Mostly, we still have some areas that we can improve on, but by and large, less people are losing their lives, less people are losing their livelihoods and their children, their property, all of that. We can consume a healing plant in peace.
Yeah.
Unless you live in a multifamily dwelling.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, which
absolutely.
we'll work on.
Which is, such important. And we're going to be talking about some of the changes that are coming up at the legislature this year. But I first wanted to ask you, we used to stand outside of the state fair. We've had many events in coffee shops with a couple people showing up from rural Minnesota. You've been a very open cannabis consumer prior to legalization.
Yes.
What has it been like now being in a legal adult use state as a cannabis consumer?
It's been, I think, for me, the most important piece is not just that I can consume and feel free to do so. I've had a lot of privilege that's allowed me to do that in my life. What I've really loved to hear about are the people who say, I never thought I'd see legalization in my lifetime. I love hearing from the elders who say that they've never tried cannabis, but they've been suffering in pain for many, many years, and to say that now that it's legal, they tried it. And for the first time in a long time, they're enjoying their lives in a different way. I hear from people's, people say their parents or their grandparents. And so finding people who've lived an entire life of prohibition benefit from a healing plant, that's probably my favorite part. I also love seeing everybody's home grows posted in all the growing sites and the groups on Facebook and all over. I loved your post the most, that the night before legalization day. I think that takes the cake, you win. And I think the other thing I love seeing is the innovation that's happening. So places like this, different organizations that are coming together. We've got, like the 420 girlies who are all getting the girl groups together and having wine nights and cannabis nights. This community that has existed beneath the radar for so long is finally coming above board and able to say and invite more people in and to say, like, we're here, we're taxpayers, we're regular members of the community, and we're not being othered as much anymore. I think there's still some of that happening, or I know there's still some of that happening, but I think the lack of othering has got to be the other great piece that I like.
I love that. Well, and it's so, I think, amazing watching how, I really came to sort of political awareness through cannabis around 2013, watching a couple other states really go about legalizing and thinking, wow, could that ever happen here in Minnesota? seeing the evolution to today where it's like, wow, Minnesota has probably some of the most progressive cannabis laws in the entire country. And we're just working to continue to improve those and really just create the best program possible.
We promised we would build the best model for full legalization in the nation. That doesn't mean it is without flaws, but you can look at different public policy experts. You can talk to me about why we did certain things. Everything we did for a reason. And so when people look at the parts of the bill that maybe don't make sense, or they're maybe questioning, like, this seems silly, or why do they do it this way? Ask those questions. Come to the Cannabis College. Ask to Anna, or ask myself. You know, my email is public information. So is my cell phone number. I encourage people to reach out to me with a question, because we were intentional about this. We have some of the highest possession limits in the country. Only one of 11 states with home growing rights. We are going to be one of the states that leads on how to do equity legally and the right way to create an equal playing field and a level playing field for everybody, regardless of where they came from, how the drug war impacted them, but also acknowledging that the drug war has held a lot of people back. And other states have not been able to do that successfully, and we are looking forward to that. And we have Charlene Briner. I mean, this is a director who is a true Minnesotan. She is committed to doing this the right way. And I just really think that we are lucky that we don't have somebody that's in that position who is trying to make a name for themselves, because Charlene Briner has already done that. She's a phenomenal public servant, and she has shown the state of Minnesota in different areas where she serves. And so I could go on and on about how lucky we are, but I'm excited to see this new program as we roll it out.
No, but I mean, it's such a perfect transition, because a lot of what's been coming out of the office hasn't necessarily been, you know, really strict policies or rules that's all being developed. But what has been coming out is, here are some of the changes that we think should happen at the legislature, and seeing really that emphasis on equity being at the forefront.
Yes.
Clearly, we've got the right person in charge right now running things.
We do. We really do. And I'm in close communication with them. You know, I just had a meeting the other day with them about this. I have another meeting next week with them. And we're collaborating with people to see what they want done, people who are most directly affected. And there's a lot of different conversations, not just licensing, right? It's access to capital. It's a lot of things. And so she really sees this in a diverse way and with foresight. And I think that's what we're really lucky to have too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, we have you here out. Obviously, I'm very excited to talk to you generally, but also because the legislative session is beginning today, at least when this episode is coming out. And we wanted to ask you what some of those changes that are being pushed for at the legislature are, and sort of what you're hearing. So very generally, what measures have you heard about being pushed for this year at the legislature related to cannabis?
I am carrying a number of measures that are coming from a variety of sources. One that we're working on to expand patients' rights of home growing. We know that patients can't always grow their own at home, and we want them to be able to take advantage of this, since it is one of the best parts of our model. And so expanding our caregiver program to make sure that caregivers can take care of plants for their patients if they choose. We have an existing caregiver program for picking up meds and that sort of thing, and so we can build upon that and make sure that there's equal access. I've been a disability rights advocate for my entire time at the legislature, and so making sure that the disability voices and people on the medical program have a voice as we transition to the OCM from OMC, not to be confused with each other, that we have people who are advocating for making this accessible for everybody. That one I could talk a lot about, but we also have some other medical patient protections coming out, and then obviously all of the recommendations from the report. So looking at our licensing rules and making sure that the order of operations, you could say, is in a way that's feasible for businesses. We want to make sure that we're not, someone's not pouring everything they have into a business without the guarantee of a license, right? And so having some, maybe just think of it like moving some of the puzzle pieces around to create a more clear picture. The pieces are all there. It's just a matter of how do we organize them and order them in the right order of operations. And I'm looking forward to that, because I think that will have the biggest impact on what I'm hearing in the business community now. We're also looking at different drink rules. So we have a 5-hour rule right now, which if you're familiar with, bartenders hate us for it, rightfully so. As an ex-bartender, I feel you, and we're working on that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, it's that you're not supposed to serve alcohol and THC beverages within 5 hours of each other.
It's just impossible to keep track of. You know, we're not babysitters, we're bartenders if you're back there. And so I see people saying that, and we want to make sure we're responding to that. So hospitality industry, loud and clear, we hear you. And then also making sure that they have the opportunity to put it on tap, right? This makes it cheaper for packaging. There's less labeling and canning, and it actually shortens the process. And so you can get a product from brewed to consumers a lot quicker. Obviously, we need to make sure that those are measured, that the taps adequately pour the legal amount in and all of that. But I know that the Craft Brewers Association is on board. The Hospitality Association, they train their people in really great ways. We also have made one of the largest investments in cannabis and public health in the nation. And so $15 million a year will go to the school public health at the U of M, and I named the department the Center for Cannabis Research. And so we're encouraging the hospitality folks and people who do the training for people who are serving these drinks to participate and engage with the school public health and utilize some of those research resources that they have and really show the nation not only can we build the best model in the country, but we can do the best public health research in the country in collaboration with business and economy. So I'm looking forward to that. We also have bills coming forward that I heard last year. People said that, we didn't have time to do, which this is true. You have a part-time legislature in Minnesota, and so there is only so much time, and we can't do everything. But I gave everyone my word on the floor that there were things that I would pursue looking at this year. So things like wet versus dry weight and home growing. I want to hear from you. How much did your plants produce? Your 4 plants. How much did your 4 plants produce? Because I need to know if that 2-pound limit is feasible or if it's not. And I'm hearing it's not. I'm hearing people are killing it and growing a lot more. So we need to make sure that we're addressing that, because we don't want to put people in a situation to grow a legal amount of plants, but then end up with an illegal amount of possession. And so we'll be careful about that. Also looking at some of the rules around the criminal penalties. And I'll just be really honest with you. I hate Prohibition Light. I don't think there should be a ton of criminal penalties at all. And we were really, really meticulous about how we crafted what's there now, right? So we made sure that kids selling to kids, that we're not criminalizing children and putting them into the criminal justice system. And so there's an age limit difference, kind of like there is with alcohol, right? We looked at doing, making sure that if it is a large amount and it is somebody who is like very clearly flaunting the law and operating outside the lanes of the law, that there's a way to hold them accountable, because that poses a risk to all the people who are doing it right. And so it's not some of the measures are not just about criminalizing people for the sake of criminalizing people. It's making sure that we have rules and regulations in place, and so that it respects an equal playing field again, and a level playing field for legal, legit businesses who are doing this with integrity. There's a lot of other initiatives we talked about last year. You can always go back and watch our floor debate where we talked about quite a few of those. But people are wanting us to explore a residency requirement and really look at, is that possible? Is that something that we can do? So I'll explore that. I'm looking at different things that happen when people intersect with police as well. So this is somewhat unrelated, but making sure that we're people who are in a mental health crisis, and I'm working with, if they have a crisis and they need to work with law enforcement, that, if you call for help, that you're not getting in trouble for it, right? We have Steve's Law in place, which helps with some of that, but there's people who are calling for mental health crises in particular. So they're not calling for an overdose, but they're calling the police for a mental health crisis, and then are being criminalized for where they have cannabis or if they have too much or whatever it might be. And so just looking at really how the war on drugs has played out in a lot of different ways. I could keep going, but I'll
I super
there.
appreciate all the information. I think really what I love is that, in total honesty, like I've known you for a while, and you were really someone who taught me a lot about how the war on drugs isn't just people get arrested, they go to prison, and that's it. But it's this whole institutionalized infrastructure that's been built up around the idea that we should be criminalizing people over the possession of a plant.
Yes.
And I think what's been really cool to see in Minnesota is a push not just to say, hey, your stores are open, go be happy with that, stop fighting, but to say, how can we go about really seeking to repair, or to at least move in the direction of repairing some of these harms? And I think as a cannabis consumer focused not just on, I want to buy product, but also I want to buy product in an equitable system that supports local business. Just thank you for the way that the bill was created and it came out.
Well, and people don't always talk about the Can Renew program, and it is a really critical part of this. The Can Renew program is one of the largest payments, let me be very clear, payments towards reparations in the country, in the history. And we have to be honest about what that costs. There is no cost for the life of somebody who was killed. Philando Castile's life was invaluable. He was an amazing man that should still be with us today. And the fact that cannabis made the officer fear for his life is unacceptable. And so no amount of money that we can ever put into a reparations fund like that would ever actually fix anything, but we can make payments towards it, and we can invest in improving the social determinants of health in the communities that the war on drugs have hurt the most. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is finding the ways to lead the nation on doing the right thing. We're the North Star state. We have an obligation to lead and to do it with integrity. And I think this is one of the many ways in cannabis that we'll do that.
I love it. I have such a clear memory of the bill passing in the Senate and feeling like this awe of just wow, this moment, and us sitting out and talking afterwards. And really the things that kept coming up is, wow, the amount of money that was written to this grant programs is really going to have a sizable impact.
Yeah.
The people that are going to be able to get these licenses are really the people that we want to be starting these businesses. And I haven't lost that glow. It's still really cool being able to live in a state that says we didn't just legalize cannabis, but at least in the direction we're moving, we legalized it the right way.
Yeah, and we recognize the harms of our past. I mean, I don't know about anybody else's parents, but I was raised by a Republican and a Democrat, so I grew up in a divided legislature. And, I was always taught by both of them, when you mess up, you do the right thing to fix it. Hold yourself accountable, have integrity, be authentic. And this is a way that we can just honestly acknowledge the disparities and to start to take a step forward. But it also shuts down this belief that, legalizing cannabis was simply a racial justice issue. No, legalizing cannabis and beginning reparations and making sure we're doing the social equity piece of this earnestly, that is what it looks like to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of coming forward a little bit, this upcoming session is going to be definitely on the shorter side. We've talked to some other people. They maybe have some doubts that perhaps bills will make their way through the legislature. All of that being said, prior to being elected, you actually were the activist. We've made so many calls together to legislators saying, hey, please pass this bill. Looking at the forward upcoming session, what can people be doing to help support the efforts there? If they're thinking, hey, I heard something that Jess Hanson said tonight that I really support that. I think we should have that in Minnesota. What can they be doing to help support those efforts?
So I'm the right person to ask for this. This is my favorite thing to do. I'm a MAPLer. If you're not familiar with that program, it's a Master's in Advocacy and Political Leadership. It's housed at Metropolitan State University. And in that program is where we really learned about the importance of advocacy. My background's also in social work, which is very, very much founded in advocacy. And so I am always encouraging people to know, where is your power most effective? Do not underestimate your power, first of all, right? And power is held by those who take it, so don't leave yours on the table either. We have to make sure that you're showing up in the right places. So these points of intervention, you could call them, right? Where are you intervening in the conversation? It might be in committee. It might be at the OCM briefings or the DEED community engagement hearings, any of that. But right now, I think the most important place people can talk at their elected officials is at the city level. Cities around the state of Minnesota right now are working on banning cannabis consumption in public. They are legally allowed to do so because I respect local control, and I thought that was important that we put that, give local entities the opportunity to choose where do they want people consuming cannabis. So I represent two cities. One city says anywhere, everywhere, and all you want. The other city says only in single-family homes. Right? And so we have to make sure that we are approaching these issues mindfully. So talk to your city councils, make sure that they are not outright banning public consumption, make sure that they're creating some space in your city where people can safely consume outside. Because again, people who live in multifamily dwellings are currently not legally allowed to consume in their building, and landlords are threatening them with eviction. Now we're working on addressing that because they are not supposed to be doing that. It was supposed to be a civil fine, but you can contact Senator Ron Latz if you have more questions. He's worked in this space for a long time, and he was really adamant about that particular rule going into place. And so definitely ask him those questions. You're going to get some some direct answers because he has, again, worked in this space from my understanding. And so one, at the city level, talk about that. To me, please email me. I need to hear from you. I know that so many people out here have really great ideas, but I can't help you if I don't know about them. And you may not get on my calendar. You may not get a reply from me right away because I literally get hundreds of emails a day. But I personally look at all of my own emails during session. I have some help outside of session because, as you know, I'm a single mom. I work full time. Life is busy. So I do take advantage of my staff to help me with that. But during session, I'm seeing your emails. When issues are coming up, I'm going into my cannabis folder where I have everybody's email that's ever emailed me about cannabis. And I'm making sure that I'm incorporating all of that. I keep your concerns on a spreadsheet. So when somebody says something to me, I have a spreadsheet that I share with the Office of Cannabis Management to keep them up to date on what some of the movers and shakers in our community are talking about, or just good ideas I hear from new folks, right? So keeping me in the loop is really important. I know that there's been like the shift in leadership from Representative Chair Stevenson, who carried this and just brought it home with Senator Lindsay Port. We kept shout out to them for all the work they've done. And they're going to, continue to be helpful as well, but they also are chairs of really important committees, right? And so to share the wealth and to make sure that we're spreading all of the work out evenly, you can contact your local representative. If you're represented by a Republican, you may or may not get a supportive answer, and I may or may not ever hear about it. So copy me. You can contact the Office of Cannabis Management. Go directly to the source, but copy me. I want to see too. I want to know what people are talking about. I really appreciate some people that have created some Facebook groups to encourage advocacy there. And so talking to each other and coming up with ideas. Just, I think the only other thing I'd say to folks who want to get involved is remember that complaining is not a solution, especially in the legislature. You can complain all day long, but unless you bring solutions, you're not going to be taken seriously, right? And I know you have solutions because you have complaints. I just need you to get to the solution part when we're talking. Because if we don't hear what you think we should do about it, it's hard for us to take action. Our job is to amplify your voice. I can't amplify complaints because then I got people asking me, so what's the solution?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So we need to make sure that if you're coming with a complaint, come with a proposed solution. I can't guarantee it will go anywhere or anything like that, but at least we shoot your shot. Let's try it. You miss all the shots you don't take, or whatever the saying is, right? Like, so do that. But also remember that everybody who's working for you on this is a Minnesotan. We are all from here. We all, or at least have a tie here. We're all living here together. And so engaging with your mayors, engaging with your neighbors, that's the kind of advocacy we need to see. The last thing I'll say on that is, like, as you advocate and you're encouraging others to do so, or you're participating in the Reddit threads or whatever you're doing, be careful what you repeat. I have seen people repeating some information that is so wrong. And it's a shame to see people kind of jeopardize their credibility in that way, because not just because you heard it from a predatory consultant, which they're everywhere right now, right? Absolutely. Be careful. Or somebody who's, transformed their business into now as a cannabis business. So cannabis HVAC, cannabis lawyer, cannabis this, cannabis that. They just added cannabis to the front of their profession. Be careful, because they are wanting to get into this industry, and they're welcome. We want them in our industry. We need services like this. But they are not the experts either. So I'm not even an expert. Sometimes I have to ask questions. And so really remembering that there is no easy button in life, and there is no easy button in policymaking or in advocacy. So you've got to show up and do the work. And the world's run by people who show up, and power is held by those who take it. And so make sure that you are being responsible with what you take, and just be careful what you repeat.
I love that. Well, we'll also be putting your personal phone number in the... No, I'm just kidding.
No, it is. You can. It's my personal number's on my website. Feel free.
All right. We'll link it then. Well, so we love having you on talking about cannabis, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what other stuff are you working on in the session? We asked you a lot about cannabis, but it's obviously not the only thing you're doing.
The big thing that I'm working on this year outside of cannabis stuff is other justice-related issues. That's what brought me to working on cannabis, was justice issues, and wanting to make sure that we had an even... I'll use the word, an even or level playing field for everybody in society. And so one of the big things I'll focus on is mental health and policing, making sure the right professionals show up when you have a mental health crisis. Firefighters show up to fires, EMTs and EMSs show up to, medical emergencies and more, and police show up to all of it. And so making sure that you're also getting a crisis worker when you need one. I passed a law last year to do that, and we're going to continue to strengthen that to really defend people who are in crisis and need help, not punishment. Making sure people who are in jail get the mental health care they need, making sure that the people who do have interactions with police, we know a lot of times that there's folks who will be out of control of their bodies, whether it's because of a medical condition or because of the state of crisis. And oftentimes that leads to, officers getting a flailing arm or getting something thrown at them. We want to make sure that we're not criminalizing people who are not intending to hurt people, that are really just looking for help. And so having conversations about that, protecting their data in the city public systems. And those are some of the things. Those are very nuanced. But also just continuing to make some repairs to our social workforce. That is really important to us right now because we don't have enough workers to provide the services we need, but yet we're in a mental health crisis. We always say we got to fix our mental health system. Nah, we got to build it. It doesn't exist. And so that's what I'm working on building is really amping that up and finding more pathways for more people to get into the work. And, also looking at some of our disability rights systems. I talked about that before. We are revamping some things on how we help people with disabilities. And so just making sure that we're honoring their inherent dignity and worth in those conversations and giving them a voice in that is also really important to me.
I love that.
There's probably a dozen other things that I could talk about.
Every time you talk, I'm just so grateful you're at the legislature.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. So for people that are wanting to learn more, I know you're busy getting ready for the legislature, but where would we send them to learn more about you, learn more about the work that you're doing?
Sure. So you can, if you just Google Representative Jess Hanson, S-O-N, spelled the right way. I'm just kidding for the E-Ns. But Jess Hanson, just if you Google it, you'll find my legislative page, and so you can sign up for updates, e-updates. I send them out every week during session. It's not just cannabis. You're going to hear about everything if you do that.
I know. I got one today and looked for cannabis stuff, and I was like, I guess it's just other political things,
just
which
all
is good.
The really important child tax credit, that we're cutting child poverty by a third in Minnesota.
Rebate,
EV
incredible
rebates.
stuff going on.
Yes,
it's really
and
cool.
making sure, we have some new gun laws that are in place to really, again, keep people safe as we talk about mental health. Making sure that that we have red flag laws. If you are worried about somebody that you love who is threatened to hurt themselves or others with a gun, you have an opportunity to step in and have help intervening on that. I've lost friends to suicide. I've been the last person people have spoken to before they took their life, and that is something that never leaves you. And so for me, these particular laws, I know there's a lot of feelings about it, from Second Amendment conversations and that, but at the end of the day, people with mental illness deserve the opportunity to live when they're in that state. And this is one of the ways we can intervene. So that was in my newsletter. Otherwise, if you want to get in touch with the Office of Cannabis Management, back to the point, their website, you can sign up for their newsletter as well. I highly recommend that because they send out notices about when they're doing public intake or anything. And obviously the Minnesota Cannabis College.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for representing us at the legislature. We hope to talk to you again very soon here.
Thank you, Tanner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Northern Lights Podcast. I'm here by myself. I wanted to tell you about the February 19th event that we have coming up. It's a Living Soil class. It's going to be held at Modest Brewing. You can get your tickets online at the MinnesotaCannabisCollege.org/soil. And if you've ever learned...
It's alive!
Are you a living soil?
I'm the living soil!
Do you know...
Come and learn more about me.
Do you know Stephen Cornell?
Do I know Stephen Cornell? Stephen Cornell is who grows me.
Aha, you're grown by Stephen Cornell. If you want to be grown just like Stephen Cornell grows living soil, you can grow living soil yourself. Just be like Tanner and come to the Living Soil class on February 19th.
February 19th, Modest Brewing with Cornell Urban Agriculture. Come learn about living soil.
Hey, don't they have a brand new private event space?
They do. It's pretty cool. And we're back. Welcome to Northern Lights Podcast. We're sitting here today with Kurtis Hanna of Blunt Strategies. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you out here. We also got our buddy John.
Howdy.
Welcome. So I'm really excited to have you out here today. This is for our legislative preview episode. So we'll be talking about some of the different things that are coming up in the legislature this session. But first, I wanted to chat a little bit about yourself. We've been in the industry, John and I, for a while on that activism side, and you're not a new name to us. But for some of the viewers that are watching, introduce a little bit about yourself. What brought you to cannabis in the first place?
Sure. Well, I started using cannabis shortly after college and quickly decided that it was ridiculous that this was a illegal substance and got kind of deep into the culture, and a couple years later ended up getting arrested by the cops for possession of 3 ounces of cannabis, which it was on the Iowa-Minnesota border, but in both states that's obviously a felony. In Iowa specifically, I was charged with 2 felonies, one of which was possession without having a tax stamp affixed to the thing. So I ended up moving up here because we have much better cannabis laws in Minnesota, and decided to get active. It was a pretty long process, but over the last 15 years, I've just been slowly hacking away at the law as best that I can.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so was your first introduction to cannabis activism on the Minnesota NORML side, or sort of who were the people that, like, I think of Oliver Steinberg and Marcus Harkis as like the 2 people that really like led my way. Who were some of the people that guided you to cannabis activism?
Yeah, so I started out just putting an event up on meetup.com, asking people to meet me at coffee shops just to talk about cannabis law reform generally.
Cool.
And through that process, I was able to meet Oliver Steinberg. We actually met at the Minnesota legislature in 2009 when they were having hearings to try to legalize medical cannabis back then. It actually passed the House and the Senate, but it got vetoed by then Governor Pawlenty. But during one of the hearings is where I bumped into Oliver. And Chris Wright was also someone that was quite active at the time. I got educated about how the cannabis parties had already been active here for quite a long time, and kind of assisted them transitioning into the digital world, where I started putting the cannabis party meetings on meetup.com to get more people to show up. And there was also a gentleman, Carl Olson, down in Iowa, he's been a longtime activist, and he was doing some work with trying to get marijuana out of Schedule 1. So I worked with a small team and filed a request with the Minnesota Board of Pharmacy in 2009, asking them to take marijuana and THC out of Schedule 1 in Minnesota's classifications.
That one's coming full circle here.
Yeah, we finally got it out of Schedule 1 in May. So
that's awesome. Yeah, when I first heard about you, it was through NORML, and then I also heard when you had sued the Board of Pharmacy, and also some of your further work with the medical patients. From those years as an activist, what are some of your biggest highlights when you were still on the activist side of cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the organizing side was a big highlight, because allowing people to have an outlet where they can feel some agency, where they can get together with like-minded people, share their war stories of having cannabis prohibition impact them negatively, and be able to have a support group that can work together to try to activate positive change, I think is a real healing sort of place for people to be. So it was cool to facilitate those kinds of meetings. And then in 2013 and 2014, I really started going down to the legislature a lot more regularly in the lead up to trying to legalize medical cannabis that year, which ended up being successful in 2014, which was it was a blessing and a curse, because it was great to see the change, but then we quickly found out, it didn't really help as many people as we had hoped that it would, or as adult use legalization would.
Yeah, that was sort of my coming to understanding, realization, awareness of local Minnesota cannabis politics. And I remember standing in the Capitol Rotunda at an event that there were a number of speakers at, and going through the list today of organizers, and it's like a checkbox of the people that are still in cannabis activism and still have been involved for now nearly a decade since then. It's been really, really cool seeing that wave of activism continue. For the people that are coming into this just now, maybe cannabis activism is something new. Maybe they are coming to awareness post-legalization, which is crazy to think about. But what advice do you have for that next generation of activists? Sort of what things would you tell them as they're looking at how they can continue fighting for cannabis freedom?
Yeah, well, initially when I was arrested, I kind of had a, screw the man sort of mentality of burn down the system. It failed me. It's going to fail everybody. And I think that the way that I have actually been able to effectuate change is to humanize the people that I at some points was stereotyping or having super negative thoughts about, prohibitionists specifically. But being able to sit down, over a cup of coffee or in people's offices at the legislature and just have genuine conversations about, like, here's where I'm coming from as an individual in the state of Minnesota. Can you please try to provide me with the justifications that you guys have in your head as to why this is legit? And what I find is that it's able to humanize things on both sides, where I'm able to not be seen as some, dirty hippie or some sort of lawbreaker, but instead people are able to understand who I am. And also it's helpful for me when I'm trying to try to convince them to change their minds, to not have hate in my heart, but instead see it as like an opportunity to help educate people to come to a better realization of how we can live in society, be more free, and not be quite so oppressive towards one another.
Okay. Yeah. Well, mad props for that. I mean, again, going back to the activism days, I can think back to there's sort of being this split between, do we just talk to the people that are supportive of legalization and really try to push them to go and vote, really try to push them to be legislators? Or do we talk to the people that are really anti-legalization and try to convince them or have those conversations? And I think John and I fell more on the, we got to get people in line side. I think you, and a lawyer I really respect, Tom Gallagher, really fell more on that, hey, let's have these tough conversations side. And it led to us having the most bipartisan legalization bill in the entire country, like here in Minnesota. So shout out for the work that we didn't
Everyone
want to do.
Honestly, So
things became crystal clear after Governor Walz was elected and the House was Democrat, that we had one leg of the stool, the Senate Republicans, that were like the only people left that needed convincing to get this off across the board. So it made sense to do a full court press to engage with them.
Back when Gazelka was leading the
Sure.
caucus. Fun times. But staying on that human route, like, who are some of the people in your life who have inspired you to stay in cannabis activism?
Yeah, I'm definitely Tom Gallagher's one of them. He and I helped co-found Minnesota NORML together, at least the current incarnation of it, about 13 years ago. Also, a national figure, Dr. Carl Hart. He's a neuroscientist and is very eloquent in articulating, why he thinks this is a moral imperative that the drug war be ended. But honestly, another one is Ron Paul. So when I was kind of in my anarchist phase of screw the man, there was a candidate running for president as a Republican who was having, big rallies in Minnesota talking about why liberty is something that we should actually have in America's republic. And so he, I think, did a great job of articulating why working within the system to try to reform the system, specifically on cannabis and other things, is a worthwhile endeavor. Even though he didn't become president, I think he inspired a lot of people like myself to continue to try to advance liberty working within the system.
Yeah. There was that period of time where cannabis legalization, I mean, let's not lie, it's possibly still today, where the Democrats sort of lost it as an issue, and that other flank of the party sort of was saying, hey, maybe this is something we can pick up. And there was that period of time, Ron Paul is a great example, where I was pointing to some of my DFL friends and saying, hey, he gets it. Why don't you? Come on. We were supposed to be on the same side here. So, that's a really great point. And Carl Hart, I mean, I remember reading his book when I was in high school, and it just changing my way of looking not just at cannabis, but drug legalization generally. And great point, Bull. So moving forward a little bit to House File 100, really one of the major bills that passed last year, but not the only one. You were closely involved with a number of drug-related bills, including one that legalized paraphernalia generally here in Minnesota. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to see House File 100, but also the rest of those measures really cross the line and make their way into law?
Yeah, my main response was, it's about damn time.
Yeah.
But working this was kind of like a life goal that I set for myself, was to be a part of the team that helps legalize cannabis and create the conditions to make that possible. And we finally got across the goal line, only to really find out that there's actually a lot more work to be done, specifically on the implementation side of things. But the fact that people can grow some cannabis and possess 2 pounds in their house is really a dream come true. And, but yeah, it's hard to run around and do a victory lap when one looks at all the work that still is before us. So I'm essentially just still working. And I think when the first dispensaries start opening, I'll maybe take a victory lap and take a vacation or something.
Like pre-legalization like era we're in is super anxious, I think, for people who have been in the industry, because it's like, yes, we finally passed that law, but oh my God, we have no idea what this is going to look like, like until after this session in 2025. So it's definitely still tense. Yeah.
Big time. Yeah. And there's been situations that come up where the lawmakers themselves or the drafters or the media have misunderstandings of how to interpret what was passed. And so I'm trying my best to to work with them all and just try to smooth out things that seem like big issues that actually aren't really big issues at all. Or if they are big issues, try to figure out how to work with everybody to solve those things, whether it be through legislation in this upcoming session, or it's possibly things that can be done administratively, or just a messaging thing where people can just be educated better.
For sure. Yeah, I think few years like this past year and this year have people really engaged with their local city councils just on the issue of cannabis. It's been pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
And from like everything we passed in the bill, what do you think that the framers really like hit it on, and what do you think we should still be looking to improve upon and change?
Yeah, well, we're right now sitting in a place that you can buy as much booze as you would like, I think as much as your credit card allows you to. I personally think that it's great that we can have 2 pounds in our home, we can have 2 ounces in public, but I am drastically in favor of transitioning towards more of an alcohol model where you can have a bar in your basement and have as much as you would like. And an issue that you've brought up, Tanner, is like you can't take the stuff that you grow, the 2 pounds, turn it all into concentrates, and then possess that amount of concentrate. And so there's definitely holes in the situation there. I'm going to check my notes on. So for the grow limits, I don't really like the plant limit. I would much rather have a square foot limit. I'm maybe just paranoid from having lived through Prohibition for so long, but I'm just nervous that, if someone goes into a grow tent and breaks one of the stems off, can they just be like, this is 5 plants and not 4? So that's a bit concerning, but it's easy to just say, you're obviously within the square foot limit.
Yeah, we've dealt with that a lot, especially when we've done cloning classes, when people are like, well, how many clones can I have? I'm like, well, technically 7, because you got the mother plant and then 7 clones, and then you better not have any more plants. But when does that cutting become a clone? And like there's so much of that gray area where well-intentioned people could potentially end up becoming felons just from, cutting a few too many clones.
Yeah. Yeah, another issue that I would love to see pursued, it's just the fact that our current law does not mandate that the administration or the executive branch seek some sort of way to reconcile state and federal law. I would like there to be more clarity provided by the legislature about the fact that the legislature would like the administration to engage with the federal government and try to negotiate some sort of solution here. Because I personally think about federalism, how states are laboratories of democracy. I think that those concepts only work when states are actively trying to grapple with the federal government on behalf of their citizens and say, we think we have jurisdiction over deciding, issues of medicine for medical cannabis, or police power is traditionally something that states have had jurisdiction over instead of the feds. So having more dialogue with the DEA and the DOJ, trying to come up with some sort of solution would be something that other states, to my knowledge, have not really engaged with too awful much, because this reclassification process is going on right now to potentially move marijuana to Schedule 3 at the federal level is not really going to provide the resolution that everyone really is seeking. And trusting Congress to fix this or the courts to fix this is something I don't have a ton of faith in. So I think it'd be great if the state of Minnesota could tell the feds, we really need to find some way to get out of this mess, and we want to be partners with you in trying to find that type of solution. The Federal Controlled Substances Act allows for waivers to be issued, so maybe Minnesota could ask for a waiver. Or additionally, the Federal Controlled Substances Act allows for state and federal partnerships where they just research different ways of doing drug policy. And so that could be something that the state of Minnesota requests that the DOJ allow.
Yeah, we've seen some interstate efforts with other states sort of looking at like, how can we go about solving this? Hopefully we see some Minnesota involvement with legalization coming on board.
Do either of you guys know if we've had a legal state engage the feds like that?
It's my understanding that the governors of Rhode Island and Washington sent a request to the DEA to reclassify marijuana out of Schedule 1. But as far as I know, that was the only attempt ever made by a state government to try to reconcile the conflict. So it'd be great to see Minnesota become essentially the first to pursue something after this Schedule 3 situation, because I think that the federal government's really on the back foot right now. So why not lean forward and try to get some positive change instead of just being like, well, they might topple back a little bit, and that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just be way more proactive in that. I like that.
Yeah.
And well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll come back and ask you some more questions about some of the efforts you're working on today.
Awesome.
And we're back. So, Kurtis, you told us a lot of good stuff about what we would like to add or what more we could do with the bill. Are there any things in the final version that you think should be changed during this year's legislature?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of litigation occurring around the country when it comes to the different methodologies by which to issue licenses. And I really like the Office of Cannabis Management's idea of adding some sort of a lottery system into the mix of how people can obtain licenses, just because it's sort of an idea of diversifying our portfolio, where if one investment tanks, you at least have a bunch of other investments going. But there's been injunctions that have been filed by judges around the country that are related to different qualms that litigants bring up, saying like the way that you score licenses that are coming in is wonky, and we think you should cease giving out any licenses whatsoever until our issues resolved.
That really big one last year.
Exactly.
Slow down their whole thing.
Yeah, so I don't like the idea of just scrapping the current system that we have in HF 100. I just think that having a bit more diversity of options, one of which includes maybe having some lottery system, which is an idea that they brought up. I think that's a great idea, just to make it so we can get the doors open on some of these stores, rather than being in the situation where we're still sitting here talking on podcasts 2 years from now and we don't have any place that we can buy cannabis.
Yeah. Interesting. So take us through a little bit of the work that you're doing today. So you work at Blunt Strategies, you work as that public policy and government relations specialist. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and how you help businesses to navigate the regulatory thicket that we're in today.
Definitely. So Blunt Strategies is a public benefit corporation, and so we're interested in seeing the betterment of society through the work that we do. And so part of my job is working on public policy. So I look at litigation that's happening in other states. I'm constantly, every week, checking new court cases coming out of Minnesota's appellate courts to see if they're cannabis related or if they affect things. I'm talking with legislators, I'm talking with regulators, and just trying to do my best to smooth out issues as they arise, or also pointing out issues that are on the horizon that we could maybe try to avoid if we're thinking through them ahead of time. And then the other side is the government relations work, where we have a number of different clients that have a large interest in obtaining licenses in the new adult use cannabis space, and they would like someone to work with that's well-versed in the legal system and the political environment that we find ourselves, to best position themselves to be able to put their application in and secure one of the licenses. So, there's intelligence gathering. We assist on putting together applications. We assist with engagement with local jurisdictions or with the state regulators to just try to make everyone be in the best position possible to secure a license in the new industry.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely important work. I mean, we have times on this podcast even where we'll record and say like, all right, well, that's all the news. And then we'll go home and we'll be like, oh shit, what happened yesterday? Like, this is crazy. So definitely been a evolving time here in our state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like news comes every 6 hours right now in cannabis. So it's been, right? It's been like, if you don't check in, it's like you're already behind.
And I should say, too, another part of the work that I do is trying to be one step ahead of the journalists. So I'm trying to also break news to journalists or just educate them on background as to issues that are coming up that I think are newsworthy that Minnesotans need to know about as we move forward with this whole thing.
You know, all the cannabis stories this year, it's been really awesome, honestly. Every time I read like an NPR article about cannabis, I'm like, finally, about legal cannabis.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember reading articles like 5 years ago and just like pounding my fist and being like, no, who are they talking to? Like, this is not correct. And at least now I see names and I'm like, oh, well, I disagree with them, but fine, I respect them.
So with all the work you're doing with Blunt Strategies, looking forward to this new legislature, are there anything you're hearing from Minnesotans that you'd be willing to share about what measures are being fought for right now in the state's industry?
Honestly, this session, I'm not hearing a lot of high expectations for big changes to occur. I think that there's going to be a lot of defensive plays that go on, because I think there's interests that don't like how HF 100 was constructed, and they would like modifications to be had that make it less favorable to local businesses or local, legacy market folks to be able to engage in this new industry. And so I think that that's one of the main focuses. I'm definitely hearing about a couple other pushes that are being made that I can't really speak about publicly. But yeah, the problem is that this upcoming session is about a month and a half shorter than the last session. Mm-hmm. And additionally, the legislature doesn't have anything that they have to get done this year. They usually focus on bonding, which is like infrastructure related stuff, but they don't actually have to pass that if they don't want to. And so unfortunately, that kind of means that I think that the legislature is not super interested in being there for a super long time and really grappling with a lot of these issues. They'd rather get out on the campaign trail and try to make sure that they, win re-election next year. And so I'm not anticipating a ton of changes. They just announced that March 22nd is the deadline for a bill. It would need to be heard in both the House and the Senate. And it is a self-imposed deadline, so they can modify the rules if they want to, but that's 7 weeks from now. And so for legislation to get introduced and heard by both the House and the Senate and through that whole committee process, I think it's going to be a heavy lift. And so things that don't rise above the level of technical changes, I think are not super likely to move forward.
Totally makes sense. I know there's a number of people fighting for some like expanded home grow, perhaps like a cottage cultivation license. Mm-hmm. Do you think the limited session makes efforts like that difficult to pass during the session?
It makes it harder, 100%. I do know that there's litigation that's being brought forward in very soon. It was announced actually on WCCO a couple months ago that there's a push to try to advocate for the constitutional provision that says that the products of the farm and garden can be sold or peddled. That's going to be something that I think it'll be interesting to see that get introduced and weave its way through the courts. But I doubt the introduction of that will lead to the legislature this session making too much changes. I think that a real easy way to provide some relief for people that are advocating for cultivation changes is we currently have caregiver system in our medical cannabis model. And right now, caregivers aren't able to grow for the people that they're taking care of. And I think that that is a very small, easy change that could be made where if you're on the medical cannabis registry, you can delegate the plants that you could grow to the person that's also in the caregiver registry already registered with you with the Department of Health to be able to grow on your behalf.
Very cool.
Yeah, it seems like a real simple fix.
Yeah, and with that, I think that caregivers should be able to be compensated for the costs that it took them to do that growing. I don't think it should all be based upon the model that the sadhus have in India, where you have to just gift things to them. You know about this
Interesting.
group?
No.
They accept like hash balls as donations for the fact that they live aesthetic lives. But we kind of have that model here where you just have to give of your free will donations to people with getting nothing at all in return back, whether it be products or services. I don't think that it's fair for a caregiver to not be able to pay for the energy or for the grow lights or,
All the
Yeah,
costs.
definitely makes
all the
sense.
costs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd love to say that this next legislative session is going to bring massive changes that
Wouldn't
we
we
all
all?
love. I'm just trying to set expectations based on the information I have, and I could be wrong.
Well, what advice would you have for some of those people that maybe they are looking and saying, all right, yeah, March 22nd, like I'm not going to meet that deadline. What sort of, having been the activist that fought for this for decades, I mean, what's sort of your advice to some of those people?
Well, there's a saying that coalitions pass legislation. I would say continue to build the coalition and bring people on that are able to assist you in trying to navigate the complexities of bringing an idea to a drafted bill and then one that legislators are willing to introduce and have hearings about. Additionally, though, I would say like my strategy personally is doing massive amounts of research so that maybe I don't have like a ton of money to donate to legislators' campaigns, but I do know things inside and out. And when they ask me questions of details of what I'm asking for, or just if they bump into me and they have a question about cannabis policy, I'm able to very quickly tell them, here's the answer, or I'll go find the answer and I'll get it back to you tomorrow.
Cool.
So those would be two things. And I think additionally, everyone's chances of making big reforms are going to increase next year because, as I said, this is a very short session. There's not a ton of money available, so there's probably not a lot of spending happening this year. But next year is a budget year again. It's going to be just like last session looked like. And I think that you have a lot of lead time if you're preparing to push for something next session, you have until January instead of having until March 22nd.
Right. Cool.
But speaking of last session and how coalitions are what change policy, last year, Emin is Ready, who you were with, was the biggest vehicle that allowed the cannabis community to come together. What do you encourage those who are interested in building those coalitions and helping to push cannabis reform go to learn more about how they can help?
Sure. So the question in my mind now becomes, should the cannabis activists stay in their lane of only advocating for cannabis, or should they start partnering up with larger drug reform groups? I've been engaging with the group that worked on the paraphernalia legalization bill last year, the Minnesota Harm Reduction Collaborative. I think potentially going to their monthly meetings and saying you want to work alongside other drug law reformers in order to advocate for a lessening of the still current prohibition laws that exist in some ways or another on cannabis would be a good use of one's time. But additionally, we have the Cannabis Growers Cooperative. It doesn't require that you're a cannabis grower to become a member, but we have a big event coming up, annual convention on April 10th. I think that'd be great to attend. But also just immersing oneself with the legislature by following hearings and seeing how they conduct themselves, getting involved with parties as well, going to your local precinct caucus that's coming up pretty soon to try to advocate that the parties take on different positions is a good strategy. There's so many, it's such a myriad array of different ways that you can try to tackle this problem.
We do need people doing all of those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And also just being organized as everyone's doing different stuff. Being organized enough to report back to one another to say, there's movement here. Maybe we should apply more forces on that side. Or I'm getting a ton of resistance over here. So this idea we had, we really need to retool it because it seems like we're probably going to hit a dead end. That's the kind of stuff that is very helpful when you have a coalition that's meeting regularly and articulating all of the different information that people have found out.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate you sort of filling us in a bit more about the legislative side of things. Taking a step away from that for a moment and just looking at cannabis generally, what things are you watching for over the next couple of months coming out of either OCM or the medical or agriculture, or one of the other litany of, What are you sort of watching out for over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I'm definitely watching the DEA. I'm extremely interested to see if they will make a completely seismic shift in the way that the feds have viewed cannabis over the last 50 some years, in deciding that it does have currently accepted medical use in the United States and that needs to no longer be in Schedule 1. That'd be pretty fascinating, I would say, and would have ramifications in other areas as well. I do a lot of work advocating for psychedelic law reform. So I'm interested in seeing there's currently a task force that is meeting to try to find out how we can maybe mimic the medical cannabis laws and apply them to psilocybin or MDMA in Minnesota. Otherwise, I'm definitely just really counting down the days until licenses get issued and doors get opened to dispensaries, because I am going to be elated
That being
when that shift
said,
comes.
actually, do you have any thoughts about the OCM's recommendation to the legislature to push for temporary licenses this July instead of waiting till 2025?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of addressed this slightly previously, but I didn't really tie it to the fact that it was provisional license based. But the vision that I've heard them say about those provisional licenses is that they would have some sort of lottery system incorporated in it. And I think that's a fabulous idea, just because I am extremely nervous of these serial litigators that are, there's like one guy in California, his last name's Jensen. He's literally going to every single state filing lawsuits and trying to get injunctions to essentially force these regulators' hands to just give him a cannabis grower's license. If he's doing it at all these other states, I would expect it here as well. And so I think having a lottery and a point-based system, like a dual sort of license thing, is a fabulous idea to try to prevent that from occurring.
Great answer.
And also, as far as timing goes, I would love it if they started this whole thing in July, because I just want these doors to open so people can walk into a store like the one we're in that sells alcohol to be able to buy cannabis flower or concentrates or whatever you will.
Whatever you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were watching it and we've had people ask us, like, so what was the big news from the meeting? I'm like, well, if you've been following along, really not that much. But hopefully we do get these licenses out in July, because that would be pretty sweet. Even if doors aren't opening in July, at least having those licenses in place where businesses can start building up would be a pretty big change.
It would be.
Yeah. And I'm also just excited to see the draft rules that come out in April. Regardless of when those rules actually become permanent, I love the idea that the OCM is showing their work and saying, here's what we're thinking, and we want a robust amount of feedback so that when we come out with the final rules, they're, something that everyone can at least live with, if not really enjoy.
Or at least have discussed. I think the LCM is doing a great job of reaching out to people who want to talk to them. It's like, we can't talk to everybody, but if you want to talk to us, we're open and we're here. I think they've done great at that so far.
100%. Yeah.
But
So I was just going to say, sort of wrapping up today, people wanting to follow along with some of the work that you're doing. Not to answer the question for you, I often tell people, like, if you want to know what's going on, go look at Kurtis's LinkedIn page. Like, that's sort of the place to go. But where would you send people to learn about some of the work getting done?
I mean, honestly, I'm a little bit more proud of my Twitter page than my
right, there we go.
page, but I love them both. Captain Kurtis with a K on Twitter is my handle. Kurtis Hanna on LinkedIn. But otherwise, follow Blunt Strategies. Blunt Strategies is kind of a one component of Apparatus, which is our parent company. But also the Cannabis Growers Co-op, I'm engaging with them. We have weekly meetings with the leadership there, trying to help get that to be even a more robust organization. And additionally, I recommend there's this really awesome podcast called Northern Lights.
Oh,
if
wonderful.
people could tune into that. You can also hear me talk a little bit on that podcast. I think they have an episode coming
People
out,
should go check that out on the YouTube page. You can watch that episode.
I hear it's a great one.
Yeah. Well, Kurtis, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Andy, we met a couple months back, actually, at the launch of the event space. I was able to come out.
Yeah.
Granny's brought me out, sort of showed me a little bit, and we started talking about, some of the cool possibilities of the cannabis industry here in Minnesota, some of the things that we can be adding to beverages. And one of the ones that we both kept coming back to was not just putting the THC, not just putting the cannabinoids themselves in it, but really looking at that full profile and adding in more of that terpene side.
Yeah, and that's a bold new frontier for us too, to be able to really double down on this is a cannabis product. And for me, it's a little bit of validation again from early days of especially on the mango passion, having customers go, it kind of tastes like weed. No, it doesn't. I'll give you something that tastes like weed. This is for you guys.
It's so cool being able to figure out how can we, like you said, take that flavor of cannabis that people have been saying they taste and say, no, but actually we are going to include that and really center it as something that's dominant. And, we picked the name Northern Lights for the podcast to really help illuminate the cannabis industry here in Minnesota. But, the reason we picked it is because it's one of those classic cannabis strains of cannabis cultivars that people have been growing here in the States for decades. And we're excited to really bring that flavor out with the beverage that we're working with you on. So thanks for allowing us to really bring cannabis forward and tell people this is what this is. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that interview, Kurt. Thank you so much again to Jess Hanson for coming in. Truly 2 awesome interviews telling us a little bit more about what we can expect this coming legislative session. Well, that's really all that we've got for today. You will catch us back in your feed another week from now. You'll be hearing an interview with Matt Robidoux of Raiden Labs, of David from Fizzy. Really an awesome interview talking a little bit more about those two, some of the trends going on here in the industry, and some pretty cool upcoming classes that we have.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Matt's gummies.
Yeah.
And I believe they're going to be ready by the March 18th, How to Grow Really Big Plants. and we've got Legacy Glassworks in the Speakeasy for that March 18th class. So we've got, not only do we have Matt, who's great, but we have Doc Dabbs, legend. And then we have Josh and his team from Legacy in the Speakeasy. This will be their first time in the home grow style event, but they've got home grow equipment now in some of their stores.
Cool.
Matt's got gummies on the way. It's just such a cool time for the convergence of the industry. So many people doing so many things.
Oh, yeah. Matt, if you're listening, go with the cherry recipe. That's my favorite. I really, really want more of those. And you can try those too if you come to our class in March, or whatever gummy he ends up settling on. They were all very good. So
For sure.
Can't complain.
And he knows how to grow really big plants.
Yeah, he does. Oh, yeah, he does. We've been on a couple of Zoom calls with him or FaceTimes with him where he has some pretty big plants, that's for sure.
So we're here to bring you authentic education and have a little fun while we're doing it.
Yeah. And it is February, so you'll be catching our episode next Monday, of course, but we also have another one coming out between now and then for Black History Month. Really an incredible interview with Natty Cakes, Natasha Givens. You're going to hear a little bit more about her business, what it was like transferring from that legacy to the legal side, and then also something I'm really excited about. You get to hear about the creation of the Minnesota Cannabis College logo.
Yes.
A little bit more about our branding, what went into creating the vision of the college as it is today. So
I've been seeing more of her on social. And if you're listening on the 12th or the 13th, get your order in for Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
She's got some great cakes for Valentine's Day.
I might have slid into her DMs, maybe.
Woo! Be like Tanner. Support
yeah.
the Minnesota Cannabis College. Support our vendors. Support our guests. We love having these people on the show. It's a joy. And come out to the class. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's all we got for this week. We'll be back in your feeds, as we said. Next week, you can catch us on Thursday. But as always, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok.
Shout out to the Dabbler Depot.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to the Dabbler Depot. You can always find us here. You can come and look through the glass. Just don't knock too loud. We're recording here. But you can always stop on by, grab some cannabis products, and come say hello to us. And then, of course, subscribe. Subscribe through your podcast, wherever you find podcasts, or you can go to YouTube, be able to watch us. Hello, friends. We're waving right now. If you're just listening and not seeing that, go to YouTube. Check that out. You can catch our next episode in the video format.
Yes, shout out to YouTube. We're having a lot of fun, and we're going to do even more. So hold us accountable. 200 subscribers and climbing.
Yeah. So like, comment, share with a friend, and we'll catch you all again next week.
Boom.
Thanks, everyone. Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by my co-hosts John Barty and Marcus Harkis. Production assistance from Shayna Payton and Steve Eigenman. Today's episode is presented by North Star Law Group, your trusted partner in Minnesota's burgeoning legal cannabis industry. The information provided in this podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. Information shared may not constitute the most up-to-date or legal information. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking their own legal counsel. The opinions and views expressed on this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly. Cannabis is my entryway to learning about business, just generally.
Cannabis.
And we're back. No,
Cannabis is the entry point to everything.
everything.
But fuck, that was a good episode with Jess Hanson.